we're started. All right. Like I explained earlier, my podcast, or our podcast in this case, is going to be on Dred Scott versus Sanford. And I'm going to start with an overview of the case, trial, whatever you want to call it. So basically, this man, Dred Scott, and his wife, Harriet, sued for their freedom in St. Louis Circuit Court as they lived in a free region of Wisconsin with their owner. Well, they first lived in Missouri, which is a slave-holding state, but then they moved around with their owner, who is a surgeon, U.S. Surgeon, and they moved to a free part of Wisconsin where it is outlawed, and then they moved back to Missouri, but Missouri's law, once free, always free, is like a big law there, and it's long-standing, and so they sue for their freedom. Because Missouri allows anybody, black or white, to sue for their freedom if they have been wrongfully held. But the Supreme Court ended up deciding against the Scots and in favor of their slave owner, making one of the worst, which is deemed one of the worst decisions in history that the Supreme Court has made, and saying that basically black citizens or black Americans were not citizens, and they do not have the rights that are expressed in the Declaration of Independence, which was actually not, it didn't exist at this time because it's 1857, but basically that they shouldn't be expected to be protected like white citizens. And then I have 5 questions to go along with it. And so the first question is, how did different groups of people since you don't have anything to read off, this is going to be purely like John's opinions basically, but how do you think different groups of people experienced or responded to this event? Talk about everybody, not just black people, not just white people, just a broad sense of the question.
What was the question?
Okay, very normal. You two go.
Now repeat the question.
So in my court, you can read about this, and so just how the different demographics responded to the rule of black people not being considered citizens, right?
How did different groups of people, everybody?
Yeah, different demographics. There's felt about black people being ruled not being able to be citizens and therefore have rights in America, right?
Yeah.
So
To be protected.
yeah, be protected. So I would say, like, if I was obviously if you was African American, if you were, quite honestly, I say it's mainly 4 demographics. I say if you were an enslaved person, you probably, yeah, of course. I'd say they have the least effect. You know, they probably, I mean, kind of sad but true. They probably just thought, yeah, of course we are, because why would they? You know, I say I say on one end you have that who are probably like, so what, and on the other end, the black people who are free were on the other end that was very depressed. I think the various white people are in the middle. There's probably some that were like, yeah, you know, they're probably like either side of the pendulum of fighting for. It's more of a like charity cause or whatever, one way or the other, like a political thing. That's something we're gonna fight for one way or the other. Like the slaveholders say, yeah, they really believed in it, but they probably like, okay, cool, yeah, that's what we thought, but whatever. The people who were against slavery were like, oh yeah, that's a blow, but we'll get them next time. You know, they're probably like, yeah, I mean, they cared about it, but the people that were seriously affected, that probably had the most real, you know, like the reactions that's kind of stuck. Sadly, it's probably the black people, like, well, who basically had no reaction because they're numb to it. They were already enslaved, like, yeah, we're gonna be enslaved forever, and our kids are gonna be enslaved forever. And then the freed black people who are like, man, this is a shot. You know, this is, you know, we're free. They're clipping our wings a little bit. So that's how I look at it.
And if she wants to speak, do you want to speak on this question?
You said not just black versus
I mean,
white.
I'm just saying, speak in general terms. Like, just what are your thoughts?
I mean, same thing as him. The people who like slavery were probably really happy, and the black people were probably really angry. I mean, I do think it fills me personally with a sense of dread hearing about this, because we're about to enter Trump's presidency, and
we're sticking to 1865 and before. We'll get to that bridge when we come to it later in this session.
we just don't have much else to say. I mean,
Those are your 2 cents?
those are my 2 cents. The people who like slavery ecstatic. People who didn't probably really ain't.
This is Juanita
Mama,
speaking.
you do not have to understand.
Micromanage much?
Yes.
This is Juanita speaking. I feel like the decision, it's kind of disingenuous. Like, I get what your dad's saying, but honestly, when you look at how slaves and slavery was treated, first for the Chief Justice to say that slaves were not envisioned or seen as individuals and only as property. That's not true, because you have that 3/5 rule in the Constitution. So we know that was, and the reason why we have an electorate is for that very reason. So there was definitely that push and pull of power, and how do we treat the and how do we count slavery as it comes to personhood. So that was always a discussion within the overall government. But I think that even though we are going to talk about it later, when you look at states' rights, you have Jefferson, who definitely saw states' rights as a more important than say and Hamilton. But you look at the Dodd decision now, and the decisions that we're looking at now, what you had was 1954, the sewing up of federal federal, not rights, but federal rulings that basically normalized rights across the United States. So in the Dred Scott decision, what you saw was from the Missouri Compromise, states' rights being respected state to state, and that really led to the separation of states and the conversations about whose rights are more important, Missouri's rights or Ohio's rights, because Ohio.
Why are you talking about Ohio?
Because Ohio wasn't was not.
The other state is Wisconsin.
Well, our Wisconsin, but it's the same thing. It's the idea that a non-slave state has rights too. And so what the Chief Justice did, what he really in essence did, was kick the decision down the road, and he still left it up to states to make their own decisions. And so it was going to inevitably lead to the Civil War. And I think he thought he was appeasing and probably, if we don't know his background, he probably is from a slave state, so he probably actually wanted and supported slavery. So I think that is probably, looking at the demographics of now versus the demographics of then, I think they're very similar. I think the conversations are very similar, as Isis pointed out.
Which is my sister.
I was going to say, Chief Justice Tannehill was the Chief Justice, and he was actually very much from a slave-owning state. And actually, he was the son-in-law of the national anthem. I always forget his name.
Francis Scott Key.
Francis Scott Key's, he was married to Francis Scott Key's niece. So yeah, he's very much for slavery. So that national anthem and that gift that keeps on giving is their family. So there you go.
Okay. So we are moving on to question 8, because question 7 is we're going to do that later. So question 8 is how does the topic connect to broader historical themes? For example, freedom, resistance, and equality. Which I feel like it's really obvious, but we're going to talk about it anyway.
Freedom versus what?
What are you talking about?
Well, I need you to repeat it because I didn't hear it.
How does the topic connect to broader historical themes? Examples: freedom, resistance, inequality.
Freedom versus inequality.
No, that is not the question. How does your topic connect to broader historical themes? For example, freedom, resistance, inequality. Those are examples.
Resistance is what you're saying?
Well, I think for me, yeah, I think
We need to pause this.
I think it just really connects to the otherness of black people in this country, where we're not necessarily considered Americans, but we've been here just as long as white people. Like, we're always going to be on the outside looking in. Like, I remember seeing a tweet today where somebody was like, my grandmother was born unable to vote, and somebody quote tweeted it and was like, our women got the right to vote 100 years ago, so this is a lie. And then the girl had to quote tweet him and remind him that no, black women did not get the right to vote 100 years ago.
right, not until 1954, the Civil Rights Act.
So, like, it's just really this back and forth of when black people are considered Americans and when we're not. Like, and also, like, just, I don't know if I'm allowed to bring this up now, but, like, tying into this election, white women want to keep saying, we need to plan for, like, the future. We, as women, need to do blah, blah, blah. But we, as women, didn't make this decision. Black women made a decision as a community, and white women had the choice to be in community with us as female Americans, and they chose not to. So, like, I think this is just another instance of us being rejected by America yet again.
I don't even think it's a rejection of us being part of America. I think it is just the support of white supremacy in its totality, because I think if you look at Dred Scott and you look at now, and even if you look definitely at the Dodd decision and what the Supreme Court is doing now and what the conversation is, definitely, you know, they want to say the Civil War was about states' rights, and in a way, definitely it was, but it was in support of slavery, in support of white supremacy. White people, certain southern states wanted the right to maintain slavery. So that's the piece they don't say out loud. That's the piece they want to shun away. Yes, definitely it was about states' rights, but it was about states' rights in support of white supremacy. So when you say community, when you say white women had the opportunity to be in community and support black women, to them that would have never been, in my opinion, their thought process, because that is not, they do not center us, you know. And so in that way, I guess,
but they center our labor.
Yeah.
I think that's really what it is that they reject us, but they always want to keep our labor. They
right.
don't want us to be American, but they want our labor to be American. Because, like, as we were being held as property, we built the most iconic thing in America, the White House. Mm-hmm. Like, that was built by slave hands.
Right. Yeah, and the fact that all of America is our labor, and the fact that they have this like make America great again. They didn't make America. Like, they have this idyllic identity of themselves that is unrealistic and untrue. You know, and you can see it in the upcoming president, in President Trump. He does not have the skill sets of a leader. He cannot. If you were going to pick the perfect leader, he would not be it. Even if you look at George W. Bush, you look at Clinton, you look at any of the presidents in the last 50 years, he would not measure up to any of them, including Reagan. Even in his last term, he just does not have the skill set to be a competent leader. But they see that as idyllic. And so when you look at who they think they are, it's not real. Like, it is this narcissistic illusion. really. So when you talk about what it looks like compared to now, and then it is the idea of supporting white supremacy.
I mean,
That's not what we're doing. We're not comparing.
I mean, it seemed like you ladies talked about a lot of great things
We're comparing it. We're using broader historical.
that goes throughout times. Yeah. So look, it seems like you ladies are.
Sticking to 1865 and before, but I'm letting them go on. But keep going.
Seem like you ladies talked about a lot of good things. I would say like just kind of going with the historical themes that were kind of mentioned, like I mean, state rights was another big thing because obviously it was talking about him going from this state to that state, and that's generally, I mean, it is the United States of America, and it kind of hits home that just kind of like throughout time, obviously, you got abortion and different things that like currently, but even like just throughout time, it's kind of been a thing to what's the rule of the land as a country versus that battle of what state rights and what how does that go? Obviously since the United States was an expansion at that point, that was like every new territory was looked at as being a way to battle that. I say we don't obviously not get new physical land, but like when we get these same things come up when we talk about like with technology, like, hey, you to a level TikTok, like, hey, how are we gonna treat this? Should it be legal or not? And it's whatever. Should gambling or whatever else in this state, that state, and different things. But then, and obviously the racial issue y'all hit on, like how to deal with different classes of individuals and ownership and what is truly American. Like what is like how is citizenship handled, because you bring this to the highest court in the land. In some ways it's kind of lazy and punting. Sometimes I think when we have good Supreme Court and a good when America works well is when they actually deliver, consider, and even if it's something you don't like, the dissension makes America better. Like the great dissenter who's from Frankfort, Kentucky. It was actually a slave holding guy, but then he looked at it, it's like, okay, if we're gonna go this way, let's look beyond what these rules say and let's make it better, which some of his ruling was the basis of the civil rights movement, which was like 80 to 90 years later. I can't think of his name now. But Marshall was his name, but anyway. Yeah, it's connected. I'm saying it's all connected to this in the sense that Judge Tannehill in this area, I mean, besides the racism, all this, it's also laziness to uphold and maintain the same status quo and not even to do your job and consider and expand as America was expanding. The ideas, people wanted to short the ideas. In some essence, he thought he was actually probably preventing the Civil War, which actually, in my opinion, most people's opinion, his idiocracy and laziness helped accelerate and cause it, put flames to it. So.
But I think in essence, he's doing what is just happening right now. They think they are upholding a true way of life, which in essence really is white supremacy in its truest form. They won't call it that because you can't say that part out loud. Some of them do, but in the Gentile way or the proper society, we won't say that, because either the people who are not racist, they're okay with the benefits of racism.
Connect it back.
I am going to connect it back. So when you look at the Dred Scott decision, what he was really saying is exactly what ISIS said, is that we need the labor. It is the labor of these people that is of importance. And so when we look at who they are, it is their body. It is the work that they're doing. And that is it. So when he made the decision, he made the decision based on what is their value to society. And their only value to society at that time was their labor.
Okay, so my mother and my sister have hit on this topic, but we're gonna go over it again anyways because it's what they weren't supposed to do that. But what challenges or obstacles were faced during this time period And how were they overcome? Or do you think they were overcome?
I mean, we sit here not slaves, so I think very obviously they were overcome.
I mean, if we're going to connect it back to what you guys were saying about the issues of white supremacy and how black people are viewed in this country, I mean, do you think that's true victory?
Yes and no. I think that what happened was that you had the Dred Scott decision, and you look at Plessy versus Ferguson, you look at the Jim Crow laws, you look at separate but equal, you look at all that in terms of the legal architecture of American legal system, and what you had in the 1940s, 50s that push against the legal system to say no. Actually, what the Constitution says is that what you must do is treat all of us the same. And so what you have is that then Tanny, the Chief Justice, was absolutely wrong, and everybody is the same. And so even with the 13th Amendment, which obviously was the consequence of the Civil War, you have personhood. So it's not just that their work, their body's important, their personhood is there. So then what you have is that you don't have states' rights in the focus. So this conversation about states' rights is not in the forefront. What you have is individual rights. So we're talking about individual rights, but as you go through the legal system, that's constantly being checked and challenged through gay rights, through others' rights, trans rights, things like that. And what we see now is that pushback back to states' rights, right? So that Dodd decision, which I find very funny, that Dodd decision with abortion, what the Supreme Court clearly says is that states have the right to make that decision. And so what that goes back to is that support of that idea of what's important to you, what are your values. And we clearly know that's going to be white supremacy, right? But then when it comes to gun laws and protecting people, what that court said was, you can't do that. Because there clearly will be states that say, there were non-slave holding states, there are going to be states that say, well, we're going to have strict gun laws. Mm-hmm. And so they didn't allow that. So this cherry picking of states' rights versus federal rights is very interesting. And this, I don't know, the amalgamation is not the right word. A combination of different viewpoints is just the Republican Party having it both ways. They're having it both ways. They are in our face supporting white supremacy, but also ensuring that they control the whole country, like through federal laws. So even if my state, or Ohio, or Missouri, or Wisconsin said that, you know what, y'all go southern states, be as crazy as you want to be with abortion bans, with fascism, we not in. We're out. We not doing this. We're going to be totally different. You have these federal laws that will prohibit that, because you have these federal institutions and these federal laws that the Supreme Court is upholding. So it's very interesting.
Do either one of you want to put in 2 cents, or should we move on?
I mean, I don't know if we completely overcome it, because I think honestly, to white people, white supremacy is like that toxic ex that they're never gonna really completely let go of. So like they'll say they're over and done with it, and like they'll move away from it, but then something goes wrong in their life, they want to run back. Like gas prices are up and inflation's high, so obviously we got to elect somebody who's gonna deport people from outside the country because we need eggs to be cheaper. Like why wouldn't we vote for somebody like that? So like and honestly, white supremacy is defined so much by what it's not, that like it's hard to even for white people to build community outside of it. So like, because they have like, what do French people and German people really have in common? Nothing but hatred of non-white people. So they need to hold on to white supremacy in a twisted way in order to even keep community, if that's going to be the basis of their community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's absolutely the fact that they benefit from it. They could, like, I don't actually think Mitch McConnell is a racist person. I just think he doesn't give a damn that racism hurts other people. He benefits from it, and he's okay with it.
Dad, you got 2 cents?
Basically, as I understand the question is, what obstacles and challenges are still persistent today, or did we overcome those obstacles and challenges? But I think, so when it comes to the obstacle,
The obstacles were faced during that time.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's why I said that time period. Obstacles and challenges.
And how they overcome.
That's what I just said. How they overcome. Or have they been overcome, right?
Yeah, that's something that happened.
That's what I just said. I'm not sure. Body motion.